Hey economics, we are back for what I am calling week 1.5. And the reason that I'm calling it that is because we are going to be changing our weeks from Wednesday to Wednesday to now be Monday to Monday. So I just have a quick couple of assignments for you to complete in this short half week between Wednesday and Friday. So the first thing I want to do for you is to review macroeconomic policy in the news. I had 19 out of 29 of you complete assignments this week. Very excited about that number. Hoping by Monday I can report even more, so thank you. But what I had you guys doing is just like looking at the news in your daily life and connecting it to economics. So I want to go over a little bit more specifically with some macroeconomic policy or fiscal and monetary policy with you. So our learning goals are review. This is about being able to look at economic indicators and diagnose the current state of our economy. Right now, people are saying we are not growing our economy. We are definitely contracting, and so that means the diagnosis is either a recession or depression, and time will tell which is which. And we've seen a lot of things happen with fiscal and monetary policy. So hopefully this will help you better understand those, because I know it was difficult at times when we went through that unit, but we have some things happening in real life right before us. I saw this picture and I really thought it described where we're at right now. No one has experienced this before. No one's ever offered, elementary school, middle school, high school, virtual school. And it's times that we've never seen in macroeconomic policy either. So definitely want to take some time to talk about this. The performance of our economy is changing very quickly, and people are trying to respond to that change. Here's a new term that we haven't seen before, and that is economic shock. Sometimes I've talked about this with economic indicators and I didn't with you guys. And I find that when I talk about it, sometimes I have a hard time coming up with an example. We might see natural disasters as an economic shock, but typically it's something that unexpected or an unpredictable event that occurs that either impacts the economy positively or negatively. So as the coronavirus continues to march its way around the world, governments have turned to public health measures like social distancing to kind of physically disrupt this contagion. Yet in doing so, what's happened is that it's really severed the flow of our goods and it's stalled economies. And so in the process of this, we've created a global recession, or like I said earlier, some might even say a global depression. So this economic contagion has been just as contagious and spreading just as fast as really the disease itself. And this didn't seem possible to me like even a month ago. I looked back in my email messages to see, because I have a conference coming up on Thursday. I was going to be gone from school on Thursday to go to this personal finance conference. And I remember getting a message. And so I looked back in my email to see when did I get that message. And it was March 2nd. That the conference was getting changed to a virtual conference. And I remember talking with teachers and joking with Mr. Kravik, like, what do they think, that people are coming from all over the world to this conference and so it has to go virtual, or what? We're in Omaha, Nebraska. We're not impacted. And we kind of laughed and joked about it. And boy, a month later, I'm definitely not laughing anymore. This is real, and I think, gosh, they knew what they were doing when they canceled that even a month ago. But no one ever predicted that this would take place. And so that's exactly what an economic shock is. Here's some headlines that I saw this week. Goldman Sachs sees 34% plunge in US GDP. That's really significant. And a 15% unemployment. That's really high. Second headline says, economists are losing hope in a V-shaped post-virus recovery. Don't want to scare you, but I do want you to kind of realize the reality of what we're living in right now. So what a V-shaped economy is it means that our economy would drop fast and then it would recover fast. So although we've seen our economy contract, we're hopeful and we want it to rebound just as fast, right? But now this headline is saying that they're losing hope in that V. So I'm going to show you this article. This article is called Understanding the Economic Shock of the Coronavirus. And I'll scoot it over here a little bit. And so this shows us what those shapes looked like in 2008 when we had the recession with different economies. So Canada experienced a V-shaped economy in 2008 or shortly after, where it hit a high, it dropped, and it came back up. And when I say it came back up, it came along this growth trend. That's the black line, their growth trend that they want to continue to grow their economy because that's one of their goals. But the actual growth is in that pink or the red. So Canada experienced a V-shaped economy. The United States, on the other hand, in 2008, experienced more of a U-shaped economy. They're not quite back up to what that growth trend was before we hit our 2008 recession. And then Greece, they have an L-shaped economy. So what an L-shaped economy means is that their economy never truly rebounded back to where it needed to be. So when we see that headline of economists losing hope in a V-shaped economy, that means that they think it could be more like this U or this L. And we definitely don't want our economy to be like that L. We want it to rebound. So when that happens, we look to monetary or fiscal policy to occur. And so a reminder that monetary policy is something that's implemented by the Federal Reserve Bank, and it's deliberate changes in our money supply or our interest rates. And it's designed to meet the Fed's dual mandate, which is to stabilize prices and maximize employment. So here's a couple of headlines that we've seen with monetary policy. We see that the Fed has dropped the interest rates to nearly 0%. And then we also see that the Fed has continued to purchase corporate bonds to boost struggling businesses or financial markets. So if we remember, the monetary policy has 4 tools. They have the reserve requirements, they have the interest rates on those reserves, and then they have the discount rate and the open market operations. So the discount rate is the interest rate that the Federal Reserve banks charge when they make collateralized loans. Typically, those are done quickly, overnight, to other depository institutions. So they influence the discount rate, and then they also influence the funds rate. And the funds rate is the interest rate that banks use to loan money to each other. So those 2 rates have been lowered to nearly 0. So we were already at low interest rates, and now they have lowered that interest rate to nearly 0. So typically what happens when those interest rates are lowered, we will see the effects as consumers through our small business loans or through our car loans or through our mortgage rates and those kinds of things. The open market operations are what's used with the buying and selling of bonds. And so both of those have occurred in the last week through monetary policy, through what the Federal Reserve is trying to do to stimulate the economy again. But the Fed's running out of tools to try to stabilize that economy. And this is what causes major concern getting to a recession or even a depression. So we also have to rely on the federal government, our president and Congress, to use fiscal policy. So if you remember, fiscal policy is to increase government spending and decrease our taxes. And this will help us lessen the impact of our recession. So increasing taxes and, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Increasing spending and decreasing taxes is what happens in expansionary policy. So it's implemented by Congress, and it's designed to achieve full employment, control inflation, and encourage economic growth. So take a look at a couple of headlines. Exactly what we've seen with the Stimulus Act, and then Congress reaches agreement on the CARES Act. That's what they're calling this $2 trillion stimulus package, is the CARES Act. So the CARES Act first got passed by Senate late Wednesday night, and then the House passed it Friday afternoon, and then it got sent on to President Trump to sign. So we have Congress and the President. It totaled $2 trillion, and that's about roughly 9% of GDP. So the bill includes $1,200 direct cash payments. So your household will receive a check in the mail from the government. And this check is kind of on a compendium based on your income. And so for individuals that make up to $7,500, they'll get $1,200. For couples, up to $150,000. Now, you get extra money. You get an extra stipend for every child that you have. And if you make more money than that, then they have a rate or a table that will show you, based on more money that you get, the less stimulus your package is. And so there's calculators out there that will show families what they can expect to get in possibly 2 to 3 weeks. So other things that they've done is they've extended unemployment benefits, and they increase their weekly payments for people that are getting unemployment. They've allowed us to delay our 2019 tax filing. So what this means is if you owe taxes, you don't have to pay that right away. They've allowed us to delay that. They've also suspended any student loans that people might have to pay back. They've said for 6 months at no interest, so you won't get charged extra interest for not paying. You can suspend those payments and not pay them right now. So those are ways they're trying to help people. Small businesses, they've included about $350 billion to lend out in very cheap loans. And what a cheap loan means is it's low interest rates. And they're hoping too that those loans will then be forgiven. And those loans can be used to pay their employees who aren't working right now. It also has $500 billion to help big corporations or industries. So that's where you see help going to the airline industries. Some are saying this package is not going to be enough and that we're going to need another one to come again in a few weeks. And so there's already industries reaching out saying, hey, help us too, not just the airlines, but help us too, because we are suffering. So some of you might be asking, where does this $2 trillion come from? Well, we borrow, in essence, the $2 trillion from investors by selling U.S. government bonds. So the good news is that $2 trillion in stimulus will initially increase that federal debt by just 9%. However, the bad news is that we already had a $23 trillion deficit that we've promised to pay off someday. So what's more is that the U.S. has to pay interest on this additional $2 trillion stimulus package. So that cost of borrowing will go up over time. However, back to the good again, is that interest rates are at a historic all-time low, right? They're near 0%. And so now's not a terrible time to add more debt. And this is why they have that option, is to help us out at times like this. Okay, so I hope in discussing all of this again, it helps you learn and remember that monetary and fiscal policy, because we're seeing all of it in action right now. So next thing and last thing to do before Friday is that I have a link for you to get into the Socrative quiz, and it's just to review the difference between monetary and fiscal policy. So please review this. I have the room name listed here. I also have it on Google Classroom, and then I'll see you again on Monday. Thanks for tuning in.